So, Howard Webb has come and gone, and we want to thank him for coming in, the head of the PGMOL. So many of you have questions, so many of you have been sending in messages. And what I can tell you is we've taken a selection of the points, we've put them in the pocket of Mr. Webb, and he's away to think about them. But there is Richard in Newmarket. Thank you for trying, Jim, but until Howard accepts that small margin offsides are wrong because the point of pass isn't measured with any accuracy, he will never have support from me or anyone who understands the science for that matter. See, this is the thing. People are pretty unforgiving. And I must admit, Simon, these guys led by Howard are trying their level best. A lot of people out there will quite rightly think, well, hang on,
but we
my club didn't get the decision it should have gotten a certain day.
Well, that's fine, but we mustn't get into the territory of people trying their level best. We have to get into the territory of people being accountable and make it better. Now, with Howard Webb, when the conversation, first of all, I come from the position of agreeing with VAR and don't come from the default setting that everything it does is wrong. Also, secondly, I'm also a realist that suggests that we're always going to have an element of error. So I take those part of the equation.
He said you can't get perfection.
Where Howard needs to go and where I believe he'll go, he needs to improve it. He needs to change the culture of refereeing. He needs to change the professionalism of the sport, of that particular environment. He needs to get more funding from the Premier League to make sure that the Premier League, which is a juggernaut of a financial powerhouse, deploys the same logic to the refereeing fraternity, so we get a St George's of refereeing, because clearly and undeniably refereeing is a component part of the game. They're not there yet. The more you listen to Howard, who's a straight bet, I feel that there's a distinct possibility he'll change the culture. Do I think he's going to provide a panacea of solutions? Probably not, because I think there's an unrealistic territory. But whatever questions you don't ask are going to be the ones that needed to be asked.
Yeah.
If we unless we leant across the table and grab Howard Webb by the throat and say, this decision that you didn't make against Brighton Palace, right? I want you to own it. And by the way, I want you to make sure that the referee who didn't give it wrote the apology in blood. There'll be a certain section of the audience that says the questioning wasn't robust enough.
Yeah.
I actually think that Webb has the character. If he can produce, irrespective of making decisions at the World Cup, we should have sent off De Jong.
Nigel De Jong.
Right. Irrespective of that, because that's an easy stick to bash him with. If he can get a culture into the referees that replicates his outlook, they'll be fine. But there's a massive if there, because there's a lot of nonsense behind the scenes that football fans don't understand about the structuring, how referees go through the gears and come from one division to another. There's a lot of structuring about how funding needs to be put in place. But he's now front and centre. He wants to make himself front and centre on media shows. That's fine. Be front and centre, deliver the outcomes. I talked about authority on the pitch. The referees are lightweight. They're not strong enough. I don't just want players consequenced and games ruined, but I also want referees to exude authority. And if they
there's a fine balance, as he rightly said, though, Simon. You don't want a referee to seemingly get so heavy on the pitch that it changes the whole course of the game.
No, but there's a balance between making a good decision and a bad decision. And that's what you get top referees for. If you look across the list of referees that we've got undeniably the best performing football league in the world. I'm not sure we can say that about our referees, and the answer to that question would be why. We talk about the notion of the evolving scenarios that are required, then they need to push hard. If we believe that we should be able to release transcripts in-game of the way that people are adjudicating things, then push for it and achieve it. We didn't bother with a monitor for 2 years. We don't have to follow the letter of the law. We didn't take the monitor in. Everyone else did. So Howard needs to lead. I like him as a bloke in terms of the way he come across in the media. I don't know him personally. I think he's quite strong, but he does need to be taken out of his comfort zone at times.
I don't think he fancies your idea of post-match interviews with referees suddenly pushed into the limelight.
But he's wrong.
Straight after the final whistle.
But he's wrong, and he's wrong because ultimately referees should be accountable, and they should also be held to the same standards. If a referee's had a good game, then there should be an interviewer doing an interview with a referee saying that was good, that was good, that was bad. That should be the balance.
Who's going to watch that? Hi, referee. That was a fantastic 90 minutes, and we commend you. No one's going to watch. No one's interested in that.
Well, then let's shut our mouths about referees then. Let's just get on with what they produce.
But you know that's not going to happen, Simon.
But you can't have people accountable and not answering questions if you don't put them in front of the media. And the media are very savvy and very clever at being able to turn an interview into something that's intriguing. If another aspect of the football discussion is, at the end of a game, understanding a small section of what the referee goes through, not a 10-minute, 15-minute rendition, but a 5-minute hearing the referee's point of view, hearing how the referee saw the game, hearing why decisions were made quickly. We even want people to identify with a situation. If we want to take referees out of the game, don't put any value into it. If we want to put referees into the centre of the game like we have to, the policemen of the football pitch, give them a prerequisite amount of authority, give them a prerequisite amount of respect, then maybe there does have to be a line of communication which doesn't just involve Howard Webb.
I mean, you asked him about Paul Tierney and of course, the situation regarding that day involving Liverpool and Jurgen Klopp. And he quite rightly said, the thing we did, and we were very quick to do, is support Paul Tierney. Now, obviously, you've got to respect that.
Not we, him. This wouldn't have been done before. This would have been something that would have been left to fester and would have been left alone. Because what he'll bring, if he stays to the courage of his convictions, is he's going to drag the standards up. He's going to drag the ability for referees to be braver on the football pitch on. He's going to ask that people are more prepared to behave better on the touchlines and be prepared to consequence them if they don't. He's going to get more funding. He's going to get a better standard of referees. Those are 5 measurables. If this time next year we're still seeing players create mayhem on the pitch by simulation, by surrounding referees, and officials being bullied by managers in a certain way, then he'll have failed on that respect. If we don't get measurables of how many referees are being produced through of a high quality and what the standards were before he came in and what they're like now, that won't be a success for him either.
Yeah.
So all of those things, and the point is, it's great that we've broken the glass ceiling, we've opened, the genie's out of the bottle, we've seen how it works. I want Howard Webb, like I asked him to, I want him to show me an example of how it doesn't work and why it doesn't work, and own that outcome, because the moment you can own an outcome, you can affect and change it.
Well, he said they'll show good and bad. I mean, he's promised regular TV shows next season to explain controversial refereeing and VAR decisions in the Premier League. Good and bad.
We'll see, but what we've seen
There's no point in just showing the good.
Well, there's no need to show the good.
No, exactly.
Because VAR, the assumption for VAR is it's going to work. What we do need to see is why. Take the heat out of the room. Confront people with reality. Confront the naysayers. Right? Tell me, okay then, Danny, you tell me we made this decision based upon this, that, and the other. Now you tell me, in the box seat of knowing more about football intelligence than all of us put together, how you'd have handled that differently based upon the circumstances. And then what you'll see is the naysaying gang start to come up with very little solution besides, I don't want it in the first place.
Yeah. I think FIFA need to get around this. They have an objection at the moment to former players being in the VAR truck. Well, I think they've got to get around that and make a decision on that soon, because there must be former players who would do a darn good job in that truck if they're allowed to do so. So get them in.
Well, that goes into the territory of subjectivity. There's former players that would have no value whatsoever because half the bleeding players on the pitch don't even know the rules themselves, right? So let's get things into context. But the area where they would be able to add value is a subjectivity around simulation, which is another word for cheating. And the referees can never have that in their playbook, because unless you've done something, you can opine on it, you can talk about what it looks like, but you don't know what it feels like. And a player would be able to say to an official, that is that, and that's the reason why that happened, and that's the reasons why it manifested itself. So a subjective decision becomes an educated subjective one. But you've got to get players in there that have been trained under the auspice of where their space and place is, and not just in there because it ticks a particular box that makes people suggest that there's a bit more intelligence in the room. And again, you have to have a degree of control as to the reasons why they're in there.
Yeah. I mean, live audio. Surely we're almost at the stage now that we should hear the conversations that we heard last night on Sky, and we heard one of them there today. Yeah. Between the VAR room and the on-field official. Surely we're at the time now that should be heard in the stadium. We're at that point now. FIFA should okay it.
I'm not in that space.
Why?
I'm in the space that we either the referee has enough control and authority over what's going on the pitch, and the VAR has the same to make the right decisions, because you're trying to bring people on a journey with you. You're trying to bring a culture of football fans that dissent the moment things go against them. This isn't rugby. This isn't other sports where there's a different dynamic and a different feel to it. I think that what we have a tendency in this country is give people far too much of what they think they're entitled to, rather than sometimes they have to accept certain circumstances. Too many people have got too many opinions about what they think and what they shouldn't think. But if we make referees accountable, if we deliver a better courage on the pitch, and if we deliver better tech, then there won't be this necessity to broadcast across a stadium at screaming blue murder at whichever decision goes against them in the first place.
Exactly.
A transcript.
They've made up their minds, many of the fans anyway.
Yeah.
Is it the impossible job, or is it a job that he can supplement, he can add things to and almost get it right?
It's not the impossible job. It's a job that if he's very good at what he does, which he thinks he is, and we'll see if he is, then he'll get to the standards that will be level of acceptability. If anybody thinks, and they're stupid enough to think, that you're going to get 100% of the decisions right, then they're stupid, and they should grow up and accept that people make mistakes, because you've got human intervention along the lines, unless we want artificial intelligence, and we want Tron refereeing our games. If people get the management of their expectations balanced against a better outcome, where the officials are not making fundamental errors, and subjectivity has education around it, he will have won.
Yeah.
He will have won.
I think we've got to cut them a bit of slack, because Howard Webb said to us this morning, perfection, it's just not possible. So do we accept that?
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.